Welcome to this guide on installing BookStack on Debian 10. Debian 10. Can't remember what Debian 10 is. OS version. OS release. Buster. Debian 10 Buster. So yeah, I'm going to go through the process of installing BookStack on Debian 10 Buster. This video I'm doing quite late at night. It's almost 11 p.m. here. So yeah, it's going to be pretty disorganized. It's probably going to be quite tangential. I'm not very familiar with Debian either. I'm familiar with Ubuntu, so I'm hoping that will help. But yeah, just going to go through the full process. Probably won't edit this video too much. Just so you can see the full end-to-end process, but it might meander, I might go wrong a few times. We'll just have to see, but yeah, hopefully by the end of this video, we'll have BookStack installed on Debian 10 Buster, and it can be somewhat helpful as a guide, I guess. Yeah. Alright. Let's start doing stuff. I've got this machine here. This is actually a container instance of Debian 10, but it should be the same as if you're using like a virtual machine or a VPS somewhere in the cloud. So yeah, and it's a fully updated version of Debian 10 as well. I think it's Debian 10.12, and I've just ran like apt update and an apt upgrade. So yeah, at least as of time of recording, 21st of April 2022, it should be just like the latest version of Debian 10 that's out there, even though Debian 11's out now. But yeah, doing this on Debian 10. I'm going to generally follow the documentation on the BookStack website, going through the manual install process using Apache. But we'll just take it step by step. So we jump over to the requirements, and we'll just go through these first and see what we can install. So PHP 7.4 or greater. The apt show PHP, just get some information on the default PHP version for this version of Debian. It's 7.3, so we're going to need to get a later version. So first hurdle. I mean, for Ubuntu, you should use deb.surrey. There he is. Deb.surrey.org. This chappie puts out some updated packages for Debian and Ubuntu. I've never done them for Debian before, but we'll have a look. This should allow us to install a later PHP version. Where did I click through there? Debian DPA. Through there, and I don't really know what I'm doing, but I did wander into this earlier just to check that it existed. Let's just run these commands. You might need to use sudo for these. I'm logged in as root, so I don't need to run sudo on any of the commands that I do. But I'll just do those without. So do an apt-get update. Next one is install all of this fun stuff. That was quick. And we'll do whatever this does. It gets a GVG key and adds that by the looks of it. Another command. I should say, don't run commands that you don't really trust, but I trust this chappie. And then last one, apt-get update. Cool. So if we do apt search PHP, the latest at the time of recording version of PHP, at least that BookStack supports, I mean the latest stable version as well, is PHP 8.1. So let's search for PHP 8.1, see if we get results. Cool. So we're seeing a whole bunch of 8.1 packages. So that means we can install PHP 8.1. So let's install that. So apt install PHP 8.1, and then PHP, because we're going to need the modules as well for PHP 8.1. I'm going to hit tab a couple of times. Oh, 149. Yeah. That's a lot of results. Right. I'm going to try and use some syntax here to list out all of them in these curly brackets. So PHP 8.1 hyphen and curly brackets, and some of these are included by default when you install PHP 8.1, but I never know which ones. And I'm going to need curl, comma, need GD is another one. Might as well install LDAP in case you want LDAP support. Don't technically need it for a base BookStack install, but you might need it if you need LDAP. MB string. Oh, let's go for mcrypt as well. I'm not sure if that is needed these days. MySQL in there. That one will be needed. And let's see what else we got. We got XML. Oh, and zip. I don't see zip in the list. X. W. I think I've just ruined my ABCs though. Should be zip. QRSTV, WXYZ. Yeah, it should be at the end. Maybe it's included by default. Yeah. Alright. So we'll leave it as that. Well, that's the command we're going to run to install PHP. Let's see if it works. Hey. Alright, it's going to install lots of other stuff. Yeah, it looks fine. We'll go ahead. And then we'll just let this run. Oh, got a nice cup of hot chocolate. Get me through a Debian install. Oh, lots of stuff going on. There we go. Cool. Now we can try PHP-V. See if what we got installed. PHP 8.1. Awesome. Okay. Right, that's the PHP requirement installed. Hopefully we've got all the required all of these now via what we installed. But we should get any warnings when we come to a later stage if we've gone wrong there, but we'll see what happens. MySQL or MariaDB. I'm not sure what Debian does with databases these days. Apt search MySQL server is the usual one. Do apt search MySQL, see what comes back. Scroll up. Get to M. Okay, maybe it is that package that we saw before. App search, MySQL server again. I just want to see what this was. Apt show that one. Okay. So this is actually going to install MariaDB server 10.3 by the looks of it. Yeah, that should be fine for BookStack. So apt install, and was it default MySQL server? Yeah. While that's going, we'll see what the next thing is. So we need Git, Composer, and a web server, which, as I said earlier, we'll use Apache for that. Cool, that's done. MySQL -user root. Cool, that gets us in quite nicely. So that's installed. We'll come back to the database setup. We'll just continue with the requirements. I'll hit Control D to exit out of there. Git version control. So that should just be within the system repositories apt install git. It's a nice simple one. Cool. Composer, greater than version 2. Should be fairly easy. If we just go to the download composer page, we just get the latest stable version. Should always work with BookStack, and it's usually best. We just paste all those commands in. Remember to run that last one. Then what this actually does, it only installs it into this directory, gives us this composer.far. What you also want to do is do this line. Again, I'm not going to do the sudo because I'm already root. And then we should be able to do composer and then capital V or dash capital V. And yeah, I want to run it as root super user because that's who I'm running as. We get the version number. So that's composer installed. So we can close this tab. And then a PHP compatible web server. So that's where Apache comes into it. So apt install Apache 2. It's already installed. We might have installed that with PHP. Sometimes that occurs. If we check if it's running, systemctl status apache2.service. Oh, it's running. Okay. I'm just going to look at the IP address of this machine. We'll go to that in the browser and see if we see anything. Hey, Apache 2 Debian default page. Cool. So Apache is running. Handy. Right, so that's all of our requirements taken care of. Is fairly nice. So let's start going through these manual installations. So yeah, uses a release branch by default. So the first step is cloning down the files. So if we copy this git clone command, and we want to think about where we want to install it. So I typically go for, we cd into var www, and this is usually a good place to keep websites, pretty typical. And then we'll run the command. It's not the right one. There we go. That's what we copied earlier. And then I'll run that within here. Again, you might need to be doing this as sudo, or you might need to create a BookStack folder here, and then change permissions so you own it, and then clone the folder into here. But yeah, either running this as sudo or being root as I am now will be fine. I'm just going to add on BookStack at the end of there, because otherwise we'll get a directory called BookStack with capital B and S, I think. I'm just going to depend on BookStack to say that's our folder name. Cool, and then do ls. So we've got BookStack folder, cd, BookStack, or ls into here, and then we've got everything in there. We'll do a tree command. No, tree command's not installed, never mind. We do ls just alh. Get a big list of the files. So, yep. That looks like everything exists here. Awesome. So we need to cd into the application folder. That's what we just did. And then composer install nodev. So we'll copy that command, paste. And yeah, that's fine. Ooh. Alright, I'm going to hit Control-C to stop this, because it's giving me scary error messages. So it's saying it's failing to download things because the zip extension and unzip 7-zip commands are both missing. So it's got no way to unpack these files. So we could just install the zip package within Debian. Or the unzipped package, but I think it'll be better to install the PHP zip extension if we can, just because that might be used in other areas. I'm not sure if it's a requirement of BookStack, but there's a lot of things use it, so it'd be good to have just in case. So let's again do apt install PHP 8.1 dash type zi and hit tab, and that auto completes the zip. Maybe it was there and I missed it. I say yes, I do want that. Cool. So I'm going to hit up a couple of times to get that composer install nodev command back. Run that with enter, and yes, that's more like it. Install all of those, extract them. You'll see this, it looks a bit angry, but that's fine. That will go in a future version of BookStack, but we're kind of stuck at the moment. Cool. All right, next step. Copy the env.example file to .env and fill with your own database and mail details. So we copy .env.example to .env, and then I'm going to use, is Vim even installed? Let's do nano as an editor.env. And we got a lot of things in here, including the a lot of things that we need to fill out, including the database details. So we will need to do those. Should we do those now? Yeah, let's do those now. So I'm gonna hit Control X to exit, and I'm gonna say no to saving those, because we need to create the database and the database user for BookStack to use. So we won't need sudo. So as I did earlier, I'm just gonna do MySQL -user root to access the database. We can show databases, code on to see what databases we've got, and we've just got the default ones. So we need to create a new database for BookStack. We do a create database BookStack. And then if I hit up twice and use show database again, so you've got our BookStack database. But we're also going to need a database user and password to access this database as. So I'm going to also create a user called database. No. I'm going to create a user called BookStack that accesses the BookStack database. So they're going to have the same name, and then we'll just have to have a password that's same but a bit more random. So let's do. No, you don't have to do these in caps. So I automatically do these in caps sometimes. But create user BookStack at localhost, which just means there's going to be a user that only accesses the database from this current machine, because we don't expect anything external to access this this database. Identified by, now this is going to be the password, BookStack, and then I'll actually I'm going to put some letters in there, extra secure. And I'm going to copy that because I'm not going to remember that one. And we're going to need to use that in our .env file that we copied earlier. The create user BookStack at localhost identified by, and then in quotes, a password. Finish it off with a semicolon, enter. And then we're going to, so we created the user, but now we need to give that user permission to use the BookStack database. So grant all privileges, yeah, on BookStack.star, so all the tables within the BookStack database, to BookStack at localhost. Hit enter, and that looks like that's gone through, no errors. And then one last command just to make sure, flush privileges. Just to make sure any permission updates are have taken place. Cool, so it's the BookStack database, a BookStack user, and that big password that we just copied out. So I'm going to hit Control D to exit from there. And again, I can do nano.env. And I'm just going to scroll down to the database details. So db host localhost, because we've installed the database on the same machine. and then the database name was BookStack. The username was BookStack, and then the password was that thing that we copied. I'm going to right click, paste. Sometimes if you want to use a keyboard, I think Control Shift Insert is the way to do it. Alright, so that's our database details. I'm just going to go back up to this option, because this does need to be filled in. It's your app URL, the base URL that you're hosting your BookStack instance on. In my case, I'm just using the IP address, so I'm going to change that to the IP address this was on. So it's 192.168.1. Was it 205? Yeah. But obviously, this is probably going to be something different for you. If it's the domain that you're setting this up on the web, it'll be that. Otherwise, yeah, I'm just using an IP here. And no trailing slash on this. And then there is an option above here. Oh, there we go, the app key. But we'll generate that using the command shown there in a second. One other thing that you might want to do is do your SMTP mail options. So you need to put in some I mean, you could get away without it in some cases, especially if it's like a personal instance. But if you're doing anything where you need emails to be sent, so things like forgot user password emails and things like that, you want to make sure those are filled in using a good SMTP server. So a lot of the time you can use, like if you're using Gmail, use their SMTP details in there, as long as you're not sending out loads. Otherwise, you might need to use a service like SendGrid or Mailgun or something similar. But yeah, I'm not going to go through that process. But you don't need them to set it up initially, but that's probably something you want to do later. And as it says here, there's a testing. This says a send a test button within the maintenance area. Once you're logged into BookStack, you can use to test out those details. And same with these as well. If you're going to do the mail stuff, make sure you change these mail details here. Anyway, so that's everything that we need to do here. So I'm going to hit Control O to save, and then Control X to exit. And now, if we go back to the installation instructions, we've technically done step 3. And it says ensure the storage, Bootstrap cache, and public/upload folders are writable by the web server. So how do we do that? Now, we need to know what the user is that Apache runs as, or your web server in PHP runs as. Because that needs to be the user that needs to be able to write to the special folders within our BookStack install. I know on Ubuntu this is www data, but if I'm gonna, show us if we go top. Yep. I'm gonna hit top to see what everything's going on. Okay, cool. So you don't really need to do this step because it should be the same for you. So it's www data is the Apache 2 user here. So as long as the www data user can write to the folders that are listed in those install instructions, so storage, Bootstrap cache, public uploads, then we should be good to go, which is the same as Ubuntu. It's just handy. So what we're going to do to allow Apache to write to those, we're going to use the chown command to change owner, make that recursive, and I'm going to say data, colon data for the group as well. So the data user and group is going to have be the owner and the group of the directories that we list and everything is inside them, because we're doing the recursive option there. So those directories were Bootstrap cache, and then public/uploads, and then the whole storage directory. Cool. If I do ls-al, we can now see that those locations have changed. So the storage directory has www data in there. And if we went and had a look at the Bootstrap cache folder and the public uploads, it should be the same. But yeah, that should do it. And now in the application root, run php artisan key generate. So this key is a key that's used for things like encryption. It's not used heavily in BookStack, but it is used in some areas like multi-factor authentication. Let's run that. Yeah. Cool, so now that's run. If we then had a look, go nano.env again, you can now see this app key that's got a big long bit of text in there. And you'll generally, it's a good idea to keep like a backup of this .env file anyway, but you'll definitely want to keep this because otherwise if you try to set up a new BookStack instance using your existing data and you don't have this key, it can cause issues trying to do anything that key is used for, such as multi-factor authentication. So it's a good idea to keep a backup of that. Anyway, Control X to exit. That is being done. It's not using Apache htaccess files are disabled. You'll have to create some URL rewrite rules as shown below. And then also set up the web root on your server to point to the BookStack public folder. So where we list out the folders within our BookStack install, there's this public directory here, and the web server needs to point at that as the top level folder. That's a really important step, and we'll go through that in a second. So yeah, this is done with the root setting on Nginx or the document root setting on Apache. So so basically we need to do our web server setup. Now we need to tell Apache about our BookStack install. Down here in the web server configuration header, I've got a link to a couple of different web server examples. So if we go on example Apache virtual host configuration, then this gives us a lovely little template that we can copy in. So I'm going to copy all of this to the clipboard, and then back in our terminal, we're going to change directory, so cd to etc/Apache to / and then sites available. And then if we ls within here, we should see a couple in there. So we've got 000 default.conf and default-ssl.conf. And we're going to create a new one. So I'm going to do nano bookstack.conf. Again, you might need to run any of these with sudo in front of it if you're not running it as a root user like I am. All right, and within here, let's paste in our stuff. Cool. If we go to the top and work our way down, just see if there's anything that we need to change. So this lists some things that you might want to be considerate of. I'll just go through the things that we need to change for this guide. So the server name. So this is what the address is used for this particular server. Yeah, well, I think we can use the IP addresses in here. Again, this is where you're going to want to put your domain name. So if you've got like docs.myawesomecompany.com, that's where you're going to put it in without the HTTPS or anything. In my case, it's 192.168.1. Was it 205? I have to confirm that. 205, yeah. And then document root. So this is that public folder this needs to point to, and the way that we've done stuff that points to the correct location because we installed BookStack install with var www and then BookStack. Then that matches fine. We don't actually need to change that because of where we installed BookStack into. And all of this is fairly boilerplate, so I think that looks good. I'm going to hit Control O to write out, then Control X to exit. So we've created our Apache config for BookStack, and now we need to. It's in sites available for our Apache instance, but we need to enable it, which we can do with A to en site, and then a2 ensite.bookstack.com. Cool. And then while we're here, we're just going to make sure there's a few mods activated. I think these are, what's it short for module? So that command that we just run is Apache to enable site, which is essentially what it's saying. And it basically just copies our config to a different folder to Apache 2/sites enabled to make it used by Apache. But now we need to do this one to enable some modules, I guess. So a2 mod rewrite is one of the first ones. That doesn't exist. Okay. Let's try that. Nope. Bear with me. Is it just that? Cool. So the command was a2 mod rewrite. That just allows us to do some URL rewriting stuff. And the other one is PHP 8.1. I think that's worked fine because it says module PHP 8.1 is already enabled, which I think should be fine. I'm not sure why it's saying PHP 5 down here, but hopefully that's fine. I mean, if it was running PHP 5, we'll see some big old errors when things are running. So we'll come back to that if it's an issue. Hopefully it's not though, because it says PHP 8.1 is already running. But yeah, to enable these changes that we've made, we need to also run this command, systemctl restart Apache 2. And then what we can do, we just copy that command again, and then instead of restart, we just do status and make sure it's still running. Yeah, it's active, and running. That's a good sign. All right, anything else that we need to do? Oh yeah. So we need to run PHP artisan migrate to update the database. So we need to go back to our BookStack install for that. So cd /var /www/bookstack. And then let's copy that command. So it's PHP artisan migrate. Oh, are we sure? And now you're going to see all this scrolling up. And this means that our database credentials are correct and they're working fine, which is a good sign. So it means the changes that we made to our .env with all those database bits and the database work that we did earlier is all great. Awesome. So that completed without any error. Anything else? Done. So we can use the default admin details of admin@admin.com and a password of password. Of course, you should change these immediately after logging in. Let's test it out though. So I set it up on this URL. So if I refresh, wonderful. That is a BookStack instance. And I'll just out admin@admin.com password. That is working nicely. What other things what we need to do? I'm just thinking while we're here of the things that could be problematic, and then image uploading can often be one. So if we create a new book, my new book, and we'll try and upload a large image. Where do I have a large image? In an appropriate folder. None of these are very large. Okie dokie. What about my downloads? There we go. We've got some large images. 18, 7.4. We'll try that one. So let's go for a 7.4 megabyte image, and I'm kind of expecting this to fail. Oh, accidentally click the tags. Yeah, that failed. So this is set by limits, either in PHP or the web server typically. And there is a section in the documentation for this under file uploads and then changing upload limits. So it's limited at potentially at a few different locations. So there is a BookStack limit of 50 megabytes, and you can tweak that by adding this line to the .env file that we've been editing, and that's how you do a lot of config changes. A lot of these bits throughout our documentation say tweak bits in your .env file. It's just a case of adding more properties where we change those database details. But in this case, 50 megabytes is kind of reasonable, I think. And then Apache itself doesn't really have any limits. It's mainly surrounding PHP where the limits come in. So we'll come back up to here, and it's these options here. I think by default it might be like 2 megabytes. So it's the post max size and upload max file size. There's also the memory limit, but typically that's fine. But we need to look for these within our PHP config, which is in our php.ini. So let's find that file. So cd, it's usually an etc php, and 8.1 because that's the version that we're using. And then if we enter into there, ls, and so there's a different folders here, and because BookStack is running on Apache, we'll go to the Apache 2 directory, ls there, and there we have a php.ini, or nano php.ini. And now I don't know how to search in nano. What are the lines that we're looking for? So post max size and upload max file size. And let's try and jump through these. Oh, these look like relevant ones. I'm just using the page up and page down keys to jump through these a bit quicker. Oh, maybe not. Let's keep going down. Resource limits. We look like we're in the right place. Max input. There's our memory limit. Start going down a bit quicker again. Oh, there we go. Post max size. Can we tell what line this is on? No, I don't really see anyway. Never mind. So yeah, 8 by default. I wouldn't. It says there you can do 0 to disable it. I don't think that's a great idea, but let's just go like 100 megabytes. People shouldn't be uploading files over 100 megabytes, at least for our use. So that's the post max size. What's the other one? Upload max size. Let's see if we can find that one. There we go. Yeah, this is a 2. So yeah, I can't remember what I set the other one. Say 100. Cool. Control O to write that. Control X, and then we want to run system ctl restart Apache 2 .service. And now let's try that. Let's try that again. Take a large image. Did I click that again? It's thinking about it. This image is actually like ridiculously large because it's I use this one for testing, and I've created a really like massive dimension image, which may be messing things up here. All right, it did it. It took a while, but again, I think that's really just due to my funky image there. It's mahoosive for it to resize. But cool. So yes, that's changing the upload limit, which is something you might immediately want to change. Again, you want to. We haven't gone through a lot of security stuff in what we've done here, so you'll need to think about security on your on your sort of Debian instance as well as your BookStack instance. So for BookStack, the obvious thing is going to be changing your admin account as soon as possible to edit this profile. If this is if you're going to be the admin, change that to your email, and then update the password to something that's not password. And then you can go through other things in the system. It's worth having a look through the setup security page within our documentation. And there's loads of things in there that you might want to consider. Just go through this, especially if you're doing this for a work environment, something that's not behind your own personal in-house firewalls within your home or something like that. You want to make sure things are up to the security that you need. Some of these you don't need to do everything in here. Some of these are just advisories, but there might be things that you need to consider depending on your use case. At the system level security, I kind of got to leave that up to you depending on how you're running your operating system and where it is or what firewalls it's behind. Some things in relation to what we've done that you might want to consider is that we've installed MySQL or MariaDB database. And at the moment, I'm not sure whether there's what the kind of account controls to getting access to the database are. So at the very minimum, you're going to want to make sure you've got a firewall somewhere, either if it's on this machine or whether it's somewhere on the network level before this machine. If this server instance is on the network with any other things, you probably want at least a firewall on the machine itself, just to make sure no one can access the database directly from an external system at all. So definitely don't want that. And you just look up good server hardening practices for Debian 10. So they're probably going to be stuff like changing the MySQL root user details, so there are not any defaults, and then creating a less privileged user. There's loads of things that you can do when it comes to system security, but there's much better guides than I'll be able to provide. And again, it really comes down to your circumstance and where you're using your operating system and Debian instance. But that shows you the process of getting to a working guide. So I guess something that you might want to do is to enable HTTPS on your instance, so you can access it via HTTPS and you don't have insecure warnings. It's not something that I can do right now because I'm doing this via an IP address on a local network. But if you're looking to do that, I'd recommend certbot. So you just go here, you can say I am running Apache on Debian 10. And then basically, this is what I usually do, is just follow these instructions, and certbot will kind of automatically install HTTPS on your instance and convert your Apache config to support HTTPS as well, and then it does stuff like redirect normal HTTP to HTTPS. So yeah, I totally recommend certbot for doing that. Some things that you might want to consider for when you do that with BookStack is you'll need to change a few things. So again, certbot should do anything automatically for Apache. If we go back to our BookStack install of var www.bookstack and nano env. If you remember this app URL, you'll need to update that to make sure that starts with HTTPS. If you don't do that, what you'll find is that you'll be able to access your instance on HTTP or HTTPS, but every time you click something, or actually it'll probably look really bad with big icons. Because the system still expects you to be using this URL here. This kind of forces all URLs in the system to be this base URL. So make sure you come here, update this to start with HTTPS. And as it says here, if you've already been doing stuff within your BookStack instance, so creating content, uploading images and things like that, you'll want to run this command. So it's a PHP artisan command, like the migrate command. So we just need to run that from your BookStack install location, exactly where this .env file is. But you need to run that with the old URL and then the new URL. And then what that does is it converts any existing references to the old URL in the database to the new URL. So again, you'll probably find that things work without doing that, but you might get like insecure warnings or mixed content warnings and things like that. And that's usually an indicator that you might need to run that command because you have some like old URLs in your system. But yeah, that will take care of things. So just doing certbot and those changes, you should be good to go. Yeah, I don't really know what else to recommend. So yeah, I guess that covers everything. So hopefully this guide kind of helped. Sorry about the format of it, the disorganization, and again, it's almost midnight. We've got it running. That should show you the basic steps to at least get you going with it. If you do have any questions or anything like that, feel free to give us a shout on the BookStack Discord. That's usually a pretty good place to ask anything. It's fairly informal. We can just jump in here, go into one of the help sections maybe, or general's fine. Just give us a shout. You can @me if you want. Just let me know what kind of issue that you're running into, and we can try and help you. I'm generally fairly active. I just check up on it a few times a day. But otherwise, there's other people in there that might be able to help that jump in occasionally. But yeah, all right. Good luck with your own instance.